Hi everyone, Dan here from KilowattAuto, and welcome back to another Tesla full self-driving beta experience. And today we are running version 10.9, and it's actually been quite some time since I used FSD, so it'll be interesting to see if there are any obvious improvements. On Tesla's latest earnings call, Elon Musk said he would be surprised if Tesla does not achieve level 4 autonomy before the end of the year. So I figured we should put that claim to the test and try to get a good handle on FSD's current capabilities. So currently FSD is not technically equipped to handle parking lots, but you can see that I was able to turn the system on from a parking spot and the car was able to get me out of the parking lot. And hopefully you also caught that there was a fair amount of erratic wheel spin while the car was trying to figure out its surroundings. And however, overall, I think the car performed surprisingly well and was able to get me on the road without any disengagements. In today's drive, there are definitely some factors working against the car, and you can see that we still have a decent amount of snow and the roads have been heavily salted, so the car is going to have some difficulty with lane lines, and this is what happens here where the car should be in the middle lane to cross the intersection. So I'm going to take over at this point because the car has plotted a course across the intersection from the right turn only lane, which is inappropriate. So once I get us through the turn, we'll go ahead and turn the FSD beta back on and let the car reroute the navigation to our destination. And apologies in the beginning here for the navigation prompts. I will turn that off momentarily. And as always, this will be an uncut drive and I will adjust the timing to move through the less eventful portions quicker. And any time that the FSD beta is on, you will also see the graphic on the bottom right of the screen. So this intersection up ahead is a little bit weird. The car's gonna have to turn right onto a parallel road. You see the car moves left a little bit, which is not appropriate. So I am gonna disengage autopilot at that point. And then once we are over onto the parallel road, I'll re-engage so we can proceed. And that leftward leading maneuver was, again, kind of bizarre. I haven't really had that happen in a while. It was something that was pretty prevalent in some of the earlier builds of the FSD beta when the car would have to make a right turn and it was close to the curb. It would sometimes move its positioning to the left in order to give it a better view of making that turn. So again, this is probably a bit of a step back in this case because this hasn't been happening recently and was definitely not appropriate in this situation to move into the left lane in order to make that right turn. This next light is a little bit jerky, but the car does move through it. I do apply some pressure on the accelerator just because the car was going really slow and there was traffic coming up behind us.
In 500 feet, turn left onto North Chapel.
And at this point, I'm just turning off the navigation prompt so it's a little bit quieter in the cabin. So we've got another left turn here with a traffic light. There is oncoming traffic, but once there's a clear spot, the car is going to make the left turn. A little slow, so I am going to apply some pressure with the accelerator. And at this point, the car is still kind of rerouting, so we are moving back to our starting position to that intersection that we were supposed to move straight across through. So at this next traffic light, we are going to have a green turn signal. All other lights are red, but the car does recognize that we are allowed to move through this intersection with that green light. It does get a little close to the curb here, and I think the back tire may have caught some of the snow that was on the ground. Didn't brush up against the curb, but just something to be aware of. The car does have a tendency to sometimes take tight right turns. So now we're back to our original intersection here. The car, in this case, is just going to have to make a right turn. It is moving up for visibility, and then once it recognizes that there is no oncoming traffic, it is going to make the right even though there is a red light. Here's another good example where lane markings are not very clear because the road is so salty. So the car actually needs to be in the left lane here, which it's not. It realizes that it's right about here, realizing it cannot proceed through the intersection, so it is going to continue up the road here. And this is going to be our second navigation reroute of the drive today. Still haven't disengaged at this point, but the car is going to have to re-navigate itself to get us back on our correct route. Not really sure what's going on with the awkward left and right lane bouncing here. A lot of times when the car does have to reorient itself and figure out a new course of navigation, it does kind of mess up the FSD beta. So you can see here we're moving left pretty aggressively into this left turn lane. Not really sure what to do. There was no one around me though, so I kind of just let the car figure things out. It is going to make a turn here into this neighborhood. And then now it should be able to figure out how to reverse course and get us back in the correct direction. But if anything else, I kind of just let everything play out here because there was a lot of good examples of turning. You can see this turn is really slow and cautious, not very human-like, so a lot of progress still to be made there in terms of getting to level 4 autonomy. We do have a parked car on the side of the road here. The car doesn't recognize that it's parked at first. I do apply a little bit of acceleration and then the car takes over doing the rest. And then this right turn is again pretty cautious, not very human-like, really slow. No traffic was around though, so I kind of just let the car do its own thing. And that was a pretty nice right turn. A little awkward midway with the steering movement, but it did execute the turn appropriately. And anytime that you see my hand on that right scroll wheel, I'm just adjusting the car's set speed to get us up to the appropriate speed limit. I had it turned down in that neighborhood that we were just in, just because the roads were pretty small and narrow. In general though, the car will recognize speed limit signs and set its speed automatically. So this right turn here is going to put us back on our route that we should have been taking. Up ahead, we've got a fairly sharp turn to the left, and this is where FSD always impresses me because on basic autopilot and auto steer, the car would have performed horribly at this turn. But in this case, it slows down nicely, takes the turn, we didn't cross over the double yellow line, and we were able to really nicely execute that maneuver. So at this upcoming light, the car accurately recognizes that the light is red, and it slows down appropriately to the stop line. And one thing I will say is that stopping and slowing has gotten so much more human-like over the last couple of updates. The software is now leveraging a lot of the regenerative braking, whereas in previous builds of the FSD beta, it was relying more heavily on the brakes, and the braking was just very unnatural and not smooth. Got a bit of a slowdown up ahead, and the car accurately recognizes that and gives a decent amount of following distance to the car in front of us. So with the roads opening up for this leg of the drive, I wanted to take a moment to discuss the claims that Elon Musk made on Tesla's most recent earnings call. And he stated that he would be surprised if Tesla does not achieve level 4 autonomy by the end of this year. When Elon is talking about level 4, he is referring to the Society of Automotive Engineers levels of automation. And they define level 4 as the vehicle being capable of performing all driving functions under certain conditions, with the driver having the option to control the vehicle. So at face value, that definition is pretty broad in terms of using the verbiage all driving functions with the caveat of certain conditions. And it's my understanding that intense weather situations would fall into the conditions that a level 4 autonomous car would not be able to handle. Elon has a tendency to be overly ambitious with timelines in general, so I'll be honest and say that I'm skeptical that this can be achieved this year given the current state of FSD. And you can clearly see that salt on the road, for example, became a condition where the car was not able to recognize the appropriate lane to be in. And the number of people using the FSD beta has grown exponentially over the last few months, and that is certainly going to be a catalyst for faster progress. Regardless of the timeline though, I am optimistic that Tesla will be able to achieve level 4 autonomy eventually, and that will have a pretty profound effect on our relationship with driving. Back to the task at hand here, we do have an unprotected left turn, which the car handles fairly well. It did slow down a little bit while making the turn, so I did apply a little bit of pressure on the accelerator to move us through the intersection. So at the intersection up ahead, we do have a bike lane, which the car has had some trouble with in the past, but in this case, it moves right across it into the right turn lane. and moving up to the stop line nicely here. The light does turn green, and for whatever reason, the car kind of hesitates a little bit here, but it does eventually move through the turn after I apply some acceleration onto the pedal. And then at the intersection up ahead, the car in the left lane is a little bit far over to the right in terms of its lane position. Flashing yellow lights are sometimes hit or miss with how the car interacts with them. In this case, it did start to slow down pretty significantly, so I did apply the accelerator just to keep us maintaining at a normal speed. So now we're going to have a left turn up ahead, and this is a pretty interesting interaction that the car is going to have with the oncoming traffic here. It's gotten fairly good at being able to identify gaps in traffic that it could potentially use in order to make a left turn. There were certain instances here where the car was recognizing up ahead that there was a very large gap, and it would almost start to release the brakes a little bit and then realize that the cars were bunching close together and stop. So during my entire time at this intersection, I did have my foot hovering over the brake just in case the car decided to go in error. But it did identify when it was appropriate to make the turn and started to execute that maneuver before the other car had even cleared through the intersection, which was, in my opinion, very human-like and something that hasn't always been present in previous builds of the FSD beta. We've got a right turn here, which the car executes nicely. It slows down to an appropriate speed. The road is pretty narrow here, and the snow is kind of encroaching on the side, so I do adjust the speed down a little bit under the set speed limit. This final turn is going to be pretty tight, and the car's not going to have good visibility if there's any oncoming traffic on the road that we're turning onto, but it does take the turn pretty well and then recognizes that the trailer and the other car are parked on the side of the road, so it moves around them. This last stretch is going to bring us to our destination, and overall I think the car performed fairly well today when you look strictly at its driving maneuvers. Navigating was a little lackluster early on with 2 wrong turns, but the car was able to correct itself, and I had 2 disengagements this entire drive, which in real time was about 30 minutes long. Overall, I think the FSD beta is making methodical progress towards level 4, and I'll continue to track its progress throughout this coming year. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch today. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one.